Again today. Um, I couldn't have done this yesterday. If I had tried, I had a very weak day. But today I've swam laps today and walked and had a pretty energetic day and thought I would just hop on. I'm really enjoying doing these and I've gotten really good feedback. I also think some of what I'm speaking about is really important in terms of the changing landscape of college admissions. The changing landscape of not to mention the changing landscape of the world. It's just such a moment in history. Um, I do think that in 2021, students will pack their bags and live in dorms in a sort of relatively normal way. I am certainly hoping that's the case. We all need solutions, we need treatments, and we need a vaccine and/or. So I'm hoping that's going to happen. In any case, college is not going away, and students will be applying and are in the process now, current 11th graders, of beginning their work in choosing schools and beginning to write their essays. I'm working with students who are, well into work on their Common App essay. And so it's just an important moment and a really interesting moment for the world in ways that are scary a lot of the time and sometimes hopeful and always interesting just to watch what's happening and the kind of transformation that's needed, and whether it will come about, I guess remains to be seen. I'm hoping for that, hoping and praying for that too. But I'm sort of going to pick up where I left off last time, and that was that I spoke about supplements. I read a supplement by a student who applied to the University of Chicago, and it was a really beautiful essay. University of Chicago is known for their interesting supplements. And again, there's the Common App essay, which students write, 650 word maximum. It goes to pretty much all the schools and that are on the Common App, which is pretty much all of them. And then they write supplements. This year, interestingly enough, and I think I mentioned this last time I was on here, the Common App has introduced a new question on the Common App. It's giving students the option to write about how COVID has affected them, this moment, this pandemic has affected them. And I think I had predicted that there would be supplements or questions. I didn't predict the Common App would actually include it in their main, essays that students are going to write. It's optional, 250 word maximum, but I think it's really great that they've introduced it. I would go so far as to predict that other schools will have questions and supplements in addition to whatever, why do you want to go to NYU? Why do you want to go to University of Wisconsin, wherever? They will introduce other questions that address this particular moment and COVID. If I was in admissions for many years, as many of you know. If I were in admissions now, I think I would ask questions like, not just how is this affecting you, but how has it changed your view of the world? How has it maybe shifted your view of your future? Even something like, what would you do if you could contribute, or how can you contribute? Even though it seems like, we're powerless and people are just at home and on lockdown and sheltering in place and not having as much freedom as they've had in the past. I think there's still a lot to be done. I think I told the story about Zoomers to Boomers a few Facebook Lives ago. The idea that sort of young-ish people are bringing groceries to people who can't get out of the house, to the elderly, Zoomers to Boomers. And even share that thought, which is, I haven't been well enough to continue, but I'm going to get back to it. Something that from where you are that you can contribute, I would ask that question too. And I believe colleges are going to be asking questions like that, and looking forward to seeing what those are. So it's sort of off topic to what I'm going to read today, but I will just read you the question because I think it's really interesting. So this is what the Common App, next year on the 2021 application, Common App will provide students who need it with a dedicated space to elaborate on the impact of the pandemic, both personally and academically. We want to provide colleges with the information they need, with the goal of having students answer COVID-19 questions only once while using the rest of the application as they would have before to share their interests and perspectives beyond COVID-19. Below is the question. So here's the question. Community disruptions such as COVID-19 and natural disasters can have deep and long-lasting impact. If you need it, this space is yours to describe those impacts. Colleges care about the effects on your health and well-being, safety, family circumstances, future plans and education, including access to reliable technology and quiet study spaces. Please use this space to describe how these events have impacted you, limited to 250. So that's going to be sort of a supplement of the Common App, and I predict there will be more because I think schools will want to ask more pointed questions. In the meantime, I'd like to share 2 essays, both of which were written for Barnard College and their supplements. They're both pretty short. I think they are maximum 350. They may even be 250 words. They're really beautiful essays, and they're similar and different. They're written on the same question, and the question is, pick one woman in history or fiction to converse with for an hour and explain your choice. What would you talk about? What question would you ask that woman? Both of the students whose essays I'm going to read got into Barnard early decision. They're probably home now doing distance learning like everyone else. And they answered this question, among others. Barnard has challenging questions. Another one is, Barnard women major in unafraid. How would you describe how you're unafraid? It's a beautiful question. And the women in history is one of the most difficult questions to answer. I've found that students really struggle with this. Finding the woman that they want to choose is hard among many, and then figuring out how they would approach in a way that's, not just glib and like, oh, I would ask, Yoko Ono, did she ever predict that that's what would happen to John Lennon? Actually, that's a pretty profound question. That one just came by accident. But they really struggle, I find, to choose just the woman who's going to represent them in some way in their search and in who they are. So I'm going to read 2 of these. The first one is written on about Dorothea Lange, who was a photographer well-known in the 30s and 40s. You may recognize this picture. I never know where this thing is going. This photograph that she took of a migrant woman. It's very, very famous. My student was really compelled by the photograph and the woman behind the photograph and wrote this essay that I'm going to read you now. This one is in Unstuck, which is my newest book on the subject of writing college essays and breaking through writer's block. Here it is, beautiful little essay. It's deep and complex, so you have to kind of listen closely and see how it's all tied together. But here it is. As any photographer knows, behind every image is a story. Driving home after a month in the California fields, Dorothea Lange felt compelled to stop at a pea pickers camp in Nipomo, California, following instinct, not reason. There, she recounts, quote, I saw and approached the hungry and desperate mother, and that's this mother that she's speaking about, as if drawn by a magnet. I do not remember how I explained my presence or my camera to her, but I do remember she asked me no questions. Like Lange, I am magnetically drawn to the photograph for which she is most well known, and this attraction raises questions I wish I could ask the photographer herself. You note that the woman asked you no questions. Ironically, you did not ask her anything in return. Did you take the picture because you, a mother and a migrant, had questions for this migrant mother? Perhaps the photograph itself is the question. Capturing images relies on instinct. After all, you only have a moment. Viewing photography is also instinctual. Why, out of all images, is this the one that drew me? Then one day, half in sleep, I realized that that woman in the photograph is my mother. High cheekbones, dark hair, and deep eyes. When I first locked eyes with her, I was overcome with a sense of familiarity. As 3 layers of the story are intricately wrapped into that one photograph, the subjects, the photographers, and the viewers, my question for Lang would be, who is the mother? Very complex and beautiful and interesting essay, and it won her a spot at Barnard. Beautiful. And here's another one. And of course, it's so interesting because in a way, she is speaking about how this plays out, which is that what you choose to write about is not about the subject you're writing about. So it's not really about Dorothea Lange or this photograph. It's really about the writer looking at the photographer, looking at the woman, and deciding in a snap moment that to take that picture. Just as in a way, the essays are just snapshots, slices of life of the writers, the students who are writing them and reaching towards their future. So it's beautiful in that it's metaphorical in that way too. The second one, which is in my other book, the first book, The Art of the College Essay. So this one is written by Bianca Rico. The first one, by the way, was by Mira Kittner, who's at Barnard, and same with Bianca Rico, who got in and is there or is home doing distance learning like everybody else. Bianca went through, I think she went through 8 different women and wrote, she's a good writer, wrote beautiful essays, but could not kind of, I don't know, get that essence of what she wanted to express that would reflect on her well enough that she felt that that was it. You know, this is it. So she tried this one and this one and that one, and she just couldn't find the right one. And finally, I remember her calling me and saying, "What do you think about Helen Keller?" And I thought, oh, Helen Keller, no. I mean, that's just going to be cliche. What are you going to write about Helen Keller? That's not putting down Helen Keller, by the way. I just could not imagine. It just seemed like, it's like write about an African American hero and everybody writes about Martin Luther King. Like, I just thought it wouldn't be original. And this essay is just knocked my socks off. She finally, and that's the other thing, she finally came to what she wanted to write about. I have this phrase, the tyranny of what works. You know, when I have students writing, when it's like pulling teeth and it's so hard and they can't get it out, it's probably not the right subject to write on. On the other hand, when it just flows, it's easy and you have a lot to say, there's the tyranny of what works. It takes precedent. It takes over. And that's what happened with this essay. So this essay is called Helen Keller, A Place of Power. It's a bit shorter than the other one. And also quite deep and complex. Helen Keller, A Place of Power. She was regarded as a saint, a miracle child who defied the bleak future that had once lay ahead of her. But somewhere along her journey in the public eye, Helen Keller witnessed inequality, so she very publicly became a feminist, a socialist, a pacifist, and a supporter of the NAACP. The FBI began to keep a file on her. She had become an independent thinker, and she dared to speak her mind. She had become dangerous. Initially, when the world seemed to turn around and berate her, Keller stood her ground. However, when the American Foundation for the Blind told her that she had to either stop speaking so politically or end her work with the organization, she changed her mind. Keller's work with the organization had become important to her, so she made the decision to cease airing her famously radical beliefs in order to benefit her cause. It's something. I admire Keller for daring to share her radical and unpopular worldview with a society that already didn't welcome the opinions of women, and I became upset when I learned of Keller's efforts to suppress her opinions. If I could speak to Keller, I would ask her if going back in the closet, vocally, later in her career, brought back memories of being unable to communicate as a child. I would hope that she would reassure me that she made the decision from a place of power. Complex and lovely, deep meditation on Helen Keller and her decision to back down because the Foundation for the Blind wasn't happy with her being so vocal, and she made the choice to stop doing that. And my student was questioning whether doing that ended up making her feel the same feeling she had felt when she was unable to communicate because she was deaf and blind. Did it repeat those feelings? And ends up saying, I hope that it came from a place of power. I guess we all hope that's what our decisions, where our decisions come from. So thank you for listening. Stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.